Please show my screen, and I would like to greet you all. We have around 50 people here, colleagues from TCA, and our participants. I'm Kateryna Udut from MRM. We are sponsors of PICTH UA competition. It is supported by Transformation Communications Activity, funded by USAID, and also with support of the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy of Ukraine. This event is very important in its own right because it's one of the last landmark before we close our call for the first stage. And during this round, we realized that people had many questions which they wanted to be answered, and on request of many participants, we added some time, 2 weeks almost, for the applications for you to be more confident and abide by the rules which we updated this year. In that connection, we have put together a team of TCA, which has worked actively on all of your applications, and they are prepared to answer your questions which you had so far. And this event will be arranged in such a way that in the first part, our colleagues will try to answer the questions already piling up, and many of them are typical, the frequently asked ones. Some of them are very specific. So let's first focus on the ones that we received. And after that, you'll have the opportunity to put your questions directly to the consultants, the ones that won't be answered by the time. We have this function of simultaneous interpretation. At the bottom panel, you have the globe, and you have to pick up the language. It's Ukrainian for the Ukrainian-speaking audience, the Ukrainian only, and staying with the original mode. If you speak both languages, it will be approximately 90 minutes, 1.5 hour, but you have to wait till the colleagues indicate their readiness to start answering your questions. And after the first part of this event, and you'll put your questions in two formats. First, we have the chat box, and somebody is already filling it with the contents. And secondly, you can use your video, you can use your own sound. By show of hand, you indicate that you're ready. I will connect you as the organizer with the participants. So wait till you get a request for your video. You will be connected to this room and will be able to communicate with us and get you answers. Let's now switch to the judges, and I would like to introduce our TCA colleagues, Elizabeth Wofford, Operation Grand Director of TCA, and Alexander Kleymenov, Project Manager for Film and TV, and Kateryna Nekrasova for Digital Content. And the colleagues are ready to speak. I can see the floor is yours now. I'm here to coordinate and to arrange things for you. So switch on your sound and start talking.
All right. All right, can everyone hear me and the translation okay? I am the reason that we need translation. I don't speak very good Ukrainian.
Yes, we hear you, yes.
Okay, great. So what I'm going to do is go through the frequently asked questions that we've gotten so far. And many of them, as Katya mentioned, are similar to ones we've gotten from others. So hopefully this will help answer some of the questions you may already have. So please sit tight. I'm going to go through the questions in order of where they're answered within the request for applications document. So if you don't hear your question, maybe it's just later, particularly if it's related to the conflict of interest letter. That will definitely be answered towards the end just because it's a later annex of the request for applications document. So you'll see me looking over here. It's because I have another monitor. I'm not ignoring everybody. Many of the questions were regarding sources of co-funding and cooperation with co-funding. And I wanted to start out by saying that, first of all, this is one of the biggest differences between this iteration of PICTH UA and previous iterations of PICTH UA. During the application timeline, proof of co-funding is not required. So you do not need to present any documentation or any proof of cooperation regarding co-funding or co-financing at this stage. This is also true if you are applying and your full budget is above the allowed grant ceiling of around 4 million hryvnia. We are here, we meaning TCA, are here to help organize any co-financing that is needed during the actual grant implementation. So as you're applying and submitting your concept paper, you do not need to submit proof of co-financing at this time. If you do already have co-funding or co-financing, that's great. Please let us know. You can submit those documents as well, but it is not a requirement for this stage. Anything to clarify, Alex or Katya, regarding just proof of co-financing at this stage or the fact that we don't need it? No? Okay. So there are some questions regarding the timeline. It is possible to write we want to have grants start. We're hoping summer 2022. And that is, even if you are named as a winner of PICTH UA 4, maybe in May, please do not count on receiving funds to start your activities until late July, early August. What that means is we would like for the project that you are being funded for to be completed by August 2023. That's kind of a ballpark. We're shooting for 12 months. If you think your application project will take longer than 1 year, longer than 12 months, please just provide details on this in your application form. You know, maybe it is something that you need to wait for a particular filming timeline, or you need to wait for the availability of someone. Please just indicate why it would exceed 12 months. But that is the ultimate goal, is a 12-month period of support. We also noted that there was a question regarding when funding can be received, and if you can continue to publish your program after the end date of the TCA program, which is June 30, 2025. So it is possible to continue broadcasting or publicizing your program past that end date. However, if you are applying and saying that you are going to reach a certain number of people, that number of people that you plan to reach needs to be reached before June 30, 2025. So your product can continue to live on after the end date of TCA, but whatever you are obligating or promising to achieve during the grant period of performance must be completed before the end date of the project. Alex, Katya, anything to add on those? Okay. All right. There was a question regarding sharing content on different online and TV platforms. Can they do it for free, or do we need to require payment from broadcast? There's no requirement that you are paid by a platform to distribute content. However, if your platform that distributes your content does result in payment, that's fine. It is another great example of a public-private partnership where you're able to demonstrate that USAID funding also helps you to get profit by showcasing your product. Once again, there was a question regarding co-funding, confirming that there is no requirement for co-funding at this time. If your budget does exceed 4 million hryvnia overall, and you need the full funding, you just don't have that available, we will work together with you to get additional funding opportunities. If the planned project does not exceed, the budget figure included here was 3.5 million hryvnia with full production, confirming that co-funding is not required. Co-funding is only required during implementation should your budget overall exceed 4 million hryvnia. There is no requirement for proportion should you get to that stage. For example, if your full budget of production is 5 million hryvnia, we will work with you to find co-financing for 1 million hryvnia. So even though the vast majority of funding is coming from TCA, it's totally fine. There's no proportional requirement for where the funding is coming from at this time. There are also, we have a question regarding the source of co-financing. Are there any restrictions or any required entities? No. However, we do ask that applicants be cognizant of US government and Chemonics regulations regarding partnerships and engagements. For instance, if you want to get co-financing, we want to ensure that whoever you are getting co-financing from is not on the US government list of suspected terrorists. Things like that. When we say be cognizant of regulations, that is the type of regulation we're talking about. So for this stage, no requirement for co-financing, no restrictions on the source of co-financing. But if you have questions on the source of co-financing, we are happy to talk through options.
Beth, do you want to add more about getting co-funding from different brands, especially your requests about getting additional money from like alcohol brands?
Yes, great point. So in the RFA, you'll notice that there is a content and consideration section. I can tell you the page number. Sorry, just one moment. I have the RFA document up. If you go to page, sorry. Okay. Oh, we didn't put the page numbers. It's in the RFA. I'm sorry, I don't have the page number in front of me. There are a couple things that for co-financing we would like to highlight. Content itself should not highlight or feature excessive drug use or excessive alcohol use. So branding partnerships, co-financing partnerships should also not involve any pharmaceutical companies, any alcohol companies, or any cigarette or other, I guess, smoking related companies. Profanity. I don't think there are any companies that really push profanity as something, but maybe if you're getting co-financing, think about the title. Maybe they shouldn't have any profane words as part of their company. The company should also, and the content itself should not display characters, dialogue, or scenarios that reflect stereotypes or negative perceptions of any race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation. So if there is a company, if they kind of do stereotype or do have some issues with discrimination, we probably wouldn't want co-financing from them. Let's see, I think, and they shouldn't, the content itself should not promote a specific organization or company in itself. And we'll talk about this a bit more. But If you do want to engage something for paid promotion, maybe product placement as part of this, you can discuss it with us separately. So that's just one consideration. And co-financing should not come from a particular religion or demonstrate particular religious or feature a religious interpretation over a different religious interpretation. And we cannot support any political parties over another political party. So keep all of that in mind while you're thinking about co-financing. Anything to clarify there, Alex, Katya? Sound good? Okay.
Fine.
There was a question regarding the method to estimate the number of future audiences. How can we do this? Should we rely on open source data? At this point, audience estimates are estimates. They are approximate. There is no need to be super specific because it's a future forecast. Use the data for the platform where you plan to place your content to calculate these estimates. So for example, if your platform is a particular broadcaster and you know the time slot that your content will be posted on, you can use the data for that time slot for that TV channel to estimate your anticipated audience reach. Same thing for digital. Use the digital platform data to factor in, and then factor in any marketing tools you may use to estimate audience reach. Okay, so that is mostly about co-financing, timelines, audience reach. Now we're going to talk a bit about eligibility requirements. We had a couple of questions here, and we did change some of the rules here, so I understand. Many of the questions were regarding private entrepreneurs and demonstrating that they have the organizational capacity to carry out proposed grant activities. And so before I answer the question, I just wanted to highlight why we have this in here. US government regulations do not permit us as TCA, as a Usaid implementing partner, to award grants to individuals. We can only award grants to organizations. Now, we understand that this is a gray area in Ukraine because there are many organizations who are registered as private entrepreneurs for various reasons. So we want to be able to accept as many applications as possible. So if you are a private entrepreneur, we want to make sure that you have the organizational capability to do what you are promising to do. So whether it is you hire people directly or you have contracts with organizations that can assist you, this is what we mean by organizational capacity. Unfortunately, we cannot accept applications from just a single individual because we need to demonstrate to the US government that we are providing organizational support rather than individual support. So if your staff list does not have employees, that's okay. You need to just tell us how you're going to achieve what you have proposed in your concept paper. So maybe you don't have particular staff, but you plan on using X, Y, and Z, or ABC consultants as part of doing this work. That's great. Please indicate that in the proposed concept. So if you are a private entrepreneur that does have an organizational structure and staffing, great. Please submit that to demonstrate your ability to perform the proposed activities within the grant. Okay, and another item as well is maybe you're a private entrepreneur that doesn't have a lot of experience in the audiovisual field, more of the creative field. This is okay. We will also just ask that you pay attention to the relevant experience of how you will get to the proposed concept, how you will be able to implement the proposed concept, even without the necessary experience. Are you going to hire more people? Are you going to rely on something different that you did in the past to achieve the proposed concept? So that's included there. So to reiterate, private entrepreneurs, you are eligible to apply if you can demonstrate that you have sufficient organizational capacity to perform what you are proposing to do. All right, the next tranche of questions is regarding the number of applications that one can submit. And this is a change from previous PICTH UAs, so please do pay attention here. We are trying to make sure that we expand the applications that we get. And we want to reiterate that only one organization or group of organizations. So if you have a subsidiary or another partnership, that group of organizations under one management can only submit 2 applications. You may submit 1 application to theme 1 and 1 application to theme 2. Should you proceed in either of those themes, you will only be awarded 1 grant, and that will be decided by the TCA evaluation committee. So yes, you can submit 1 application for Media Matters and 1 application for Visible Transformations, but you will only be awarded 1 grant should you move forward. We also want to emphasize that each group of organizations can only apply once. So, if you have multiple subsidiaries, please don't try to submit multiple applications to theme 1. Just consolidate it and submit the 1 theme. Okay, a lot of these questions were answered here. There's a question regarding if a person's a private entrepreneur and also a co-founder of an NGO, will the application submitted by the private entrepreneur be summed up with those submitted by the NGO? We would request in this case that you either submit a concept from the private entrepreneur or from the NGO side rather than 2 separate ones. Can the same screenwriter and director appear in several different projects submitted by different applicants? Yes, this is fine. However, if a director or screenwriter is an individual entrepreneur who submits a concept on their own behalf, only 1 concept will be accepted per individual entrepreneur, as we said. So co-production projects, they are suitable for participation. There was a question, we touched upon this here regarding that a product may not be related to a company or brand. So the question here is whether it is possible to offer cooperation in advertising for a company to raise additional funding for the shooting or marketing of a film. Short answer, yes. However, the product, the film, the TV show, whatever it is that you are applying for may not be entirely dedicated to that particular company or brand. So as long as the engagement of this company or brand does not affect the editorial decisions of the authors, it can be considered for co-financing. And it really should be discussed on a case-by-case basis, because once we do get to this stage of implementation, TCA will seek Usaid concurrence on all paid promotion opportunities. So this will be discussed individually should this be the case for your particular application. Okay, we mentioned paid promotions. There was a question if you are allowed to apply to PICTH UA 4. Should you have won PICTH UA 3 in the development category? Yes, you can. Please feel free to submit. Questions regarding the type of content. There was a question if it is possible to apply for radio content. No, at this time we are not seeking applications related to radio programming. So no, sorry. Is it possible to submit films up to 20 minutes long? Also in this circumstance, we are not going to be supporting short films, which we would call this a short film. So we will not be considering films that are less than, what did we say, Alex, 45 minutes long? Do we have
under 40.
Mm-hmm. So your film should be above 40 minutes long. And there was a question if it's possible to apply for the production of a series of TV programs. Yes, that is fine. A series of TV programs is acceptable. There was a question regarding the product. Is it a show, a series of animation, or a documentary? So it can be in any of the forms. It can be a scripted series, which can be animated. It could be a non-scripted multi-episode program like a documentary, reality TV, discussion-based format. We can do YouTube programs, full-length movies. We can also do animated movies. So the types of programs that we are not supporting at this time are short films, less than 40 minutes, short films, short one-off documentaries, any podcasts, or any radio programs. We are not accepting those at this time. And a question.
Sorry,
yes.
For interrupting you.
Please.
Я хотіла додати запитання ще від
I wanted to also add a question because many participants are mentioning that we're saying that we are not accepting applications for short forms. This is basically what Beth has just mentioned, but people are asking, what if it is a web series? Normally web series have shorter duration and they are shorter than 40 minutes. The product for some YouTube channel or online platform, etc. So in such case, the rules say that we do not accept one-off short forms. So it cannot be a documentary that lasts 20 minutes and that's it. It cannot be a short film that lasts 35 minutes. But this is a TV series or series. This is not a one-off product. This is a series. There can be 10 episodes, each less than 1 minute, but it's going to be a series. It's not going to be a one-off. That is why these kind of formats are acceptable. Most important thing that it shouldn't be something overly short and completely one-off. And such restrictions have been introduced because such formats are quite difficult to distribute on any platforms. Ukrainian channels will not show. Yeah, this is not a TV format. And it is also difficult to distribute something like that online. Well, in movies, you can show short film only at a festival. So if we're talking about social impact, these are not efficient formats. And this is not because we think that they are not interesting or not important. It's just that if they are one-off, as a rule, it's difficult to distribute them. And they get very limited audience. This is why they are excluded from the list of the eligible formats that can get PICTH UA grant.
Озвучила це питання узагальнила як від учасників.
Thank you. I generalized this question, Alex, from the chat bags for YouTube 25 minutes programs. Do you work with them? Well, if this one-off program, which lasts for 25 minutes, no. But if it is a series with 25-minute episodes, this is a form that can be effectively distributed, then yes. It can be a series, 25 minutes each, 5 or 2 even, 2 minutes if necessary. But if there are 2 episodes by 2 minutes, and we will continue this review and decide that it is not eligible, but 20 series by 20 episodes in the series, it's by 20 minutes. Wow.
All right. Thank you all. All right. So moving away from timing, if you do have more questions on duration, please do ask in the chat box. There was a question regarding the period of existence of a legal entity. Is there any requirement for how long a legal entity has existed? In this particular case, it says our channel has existed for only 5 months. No, there is no requirement for the length of time of your legal entity to be in existence, as long as it is appropriately registered with the Ukrainian authorities. Not a problem if it's brand new. All right, so moving on to the next tranche of questions. This is just regarding timelines. Many of these were received before the release of the amendment. So confirming here that all applications, all concepts should be submitted online by 5 p.m., 1700, January 24th. So please do submit all applications by that time. All right, on to the next round of questions. These are regarding questions about the application and submission. The first question here is if we could provide a list of documents to be submitted to demonstrate the ownership structure. This is indicated in the amended RFA, but I'll mention it here as well. This could be the extract from the state register if it specifies the owners and beneficiaries of the organization. It could be the statute of the organization. It could be a certificate in any form. You could just write a letter certifying your ownership structure that is signed and stamped by an authorized representative. All of those are acceptable. Regarding the date that the extract from the state registry should bear, we just ask that you submit it, that you pull it as close as possible to the time of application. So, you know, it shouldn't be from 2019 or 2021. Try to get the extract from this month if possible. If not, we understand. Okay, the next question. Regarding a certification of the charter of the organization, do I need to sign and seal each page? Do we need to specify a date? No, just provide us with a copy of the charter of organizations with the signature and stamp on the last page in PDF format, and specify the date that you signed it. Let's see. If a private entrepreneur does not have a charter, you do not need to provide it because it doesn't exist. And let's see. The document, we do not need a document that an organization is an NGO. We just need that extract from the state register. All right. Anything to add on documentation at this point from that, Alex, Katya?
No, but there is a question in the chat. It's not about documentation, Beth, but it's it's about a company who did not have any experience in producing content, but has a great idea and wants to apply. So it can be, for instance, an NGO that never produced anything, but they have this idea and they want to apply.
Yeah. We are always excited to receive applications from new participants. If you do not have audiovisual experience, in the past performance section of your concept paper application, please just indicate how you will use non-related experience to build up your application. So if you don't have experience in audiovisual, but maybe you have really excellent experience in organizing live events that involve a lot of logistics management, you can include that there and indicate maybe some of the support that you might need audiovisual wise to achieve what is needed. So what we really want to see from applicants is an understanding of their abilities and limitations, and to indicate what those are, so we can properly get expert support as needed for the areas that may be lacking from that organization. But feel free to apply, and please indicate in that past performance section how you will utilize any experience you have, even if it is unrelated, to achieve what you want to achieve in your concept paper application.
And can such organization partner with an existing production company just to fill in this gap and then indicate exactly how they will be separating their responsibilities or functions?
Absolutely. Yes. In particular, what we would like to see in this case is maybe you are an entity that has a super creative idea, but no audiovisual experience. So you will be partnering with an existing production firm. Please just specify how that partnership is going to work. Are you contracting this firm? Are you contracting a production company? Is the production company submitting it in partnership with you? What is that partnership going to look like? Is any funding going to them? Because once again, this goes back to what we were saying before. If you are submitting an application in partnership with a different production company, that production company, if they're making any money off of this grant, they should not also be submitting a separate application. But if you're utilizing them as maybe a vendor, like a separate contractor, and you have the grant is just with you as an entity, that's also fine.
So if that production company is a vendor, but they're part of a larger media group, can they be indicated on this application?
They can be indicated, yes.
But only if they are a contracted vendor.
Yeah, but if you want to submit a partnership with a existing production company and that production company thinks your creative idea is what they want to apply with, then please mention it as a kind of partnership type application. That's also fine.
Колеги, у нас ще одне запитання, яке, мені здається, відноситься також до цього
Dear
блоку.
colleagues, we have another question pertaining to the same block. In my in my opinion, Maria Semenova is asking, do I get it right? She says that you can omit the organogram if it is a private entrepreneur. So I think Beth has already answered this question. No organogram, no chart, organogram chart is necessary. Is it necessary for a private entrepreneur in real fact?
We would prefer, actually, yes, that a private entrepreneur should demonstrate their ability to achieve the grant proposal by showing their organizational capacity. So whether that is with an organogram or whether that is a listing of partners that you frequently work with, all of that is fine. We just want to demonstrate that you're not just some guy off the street submitting a application and getting a grant award.
Секундочку, дивлюсь, що схожі запитання є в чаті.
I'm looking the questions up in the chat box, trying to make sure that we have answered all of them. Yes, for some of them, we will return to them because they do not pertain to this particular block. We have a hand raised. I suppose it has to do with this block. So we can connect this person then. Yes, please do. Vyacheslav, you are getting connected and you should turn your video on and put your question to the consultant. Well, has he joined us? Because the raised hand disappeared somehow from my radar. Perhaps he changed his mind. Vyacheslav, you have to, no, he's here. He's getting connected, but he has to turn on the sound and the video. Yes, we can hear you and we would like to see you also. Can you see me yet? We can hear you. Well, just put the question. A journalist, which is about 24 years in journalism from Chernivtsi. It's a regional capital in Ukraine, in the west of Ukraine. I applied at the very beginning. You can see me now. Yes, we can. Yes, hello. So, do you take into account journalist's experience implemented in cooperation with the previous experience in cooperation with U.S. government? I had a grant from the State Department, Department of State, for a documentary on Ukrainian women 20 years ago in Italy, the labor migrants. And I have come back to them after 20 years for the second part, but that project didn't have to do with this topic. Do you take into account my positive experience of cooperation with the U.S. government? That's the question. And whether you say, look up the list of my films, things I've done, do you look into the actual products? Because I think it is important what people have in their portfolio, so to speak. Thank you very much for your question.
Доброго дня. Коротка відповідь так.
Short answer is yes, the shortest one. We can take into account any kind of experience. Your experience is very promising as far as I can judge for this competition, for this call. And it is not necessarily in communication reforms, the previous experience. You can have a great idea at this point of time, and we'll be happy to receive your application. But if there is another competitor with experience, has no US government related experience, it is also very important. We cannot say that only the applicants who have such experience can have the privilege. It's any kind of experience. Experience matters. Nevertheless, I specified my question, and thank you for the answer. Thank you for asking. Now, in this chat box, we have a couple of questions that have to do with this block. I have picked them up. Can you tell us what kind of quads you can to have open? Quads, the quads for the private entrepreneur. As far as I can understand, this is important not just for the TCA, it's for the private entrepreneur, it's for the business agent that it matters, it's not for us. And another quick question, whether they need a stamp on the document on the structure of ownership. They have already supplied their application. There is no actual stamp, ink stamp. Does it matter?
No, good question. At this point, stamps are great. We will ask for additional updated documents should you proceed to the full application stage. We will take note of when applications were submitted. So if you did submit an application before today and we notice that maybe a stamp is missing or something isn't signed, we'll make note of that for it to be updated in future applications. But no, it will not affect our review of your concept paper.
Окей, і ще раз уточняю, чи потрібно переподавати...
And one question. Is it necessary to resubmit an application if the charter had the stamp and signature on page 1 without the date also? Well, I assume that it's going to be the same answer.
Exact same answer. We'll take into consideration that you submitted the application prior to this session and that the document is submitted. If we need to have it signed, stamped, dated on a different page during a full application process, we will absolutely ask for that. Great questions, though.
Так, секунду.
Give me a moment. And there was one more question in the chat box. Meanwhile, I'd like to add something while you're scrolling through the questions. TCA's task is not to eliminate the applicants because there is no stamp on a specific page. The TCA's task is to find interesting, socially impactful applications, to find the content that is worth supporting with the money of US taxpayers, implement this content, and make it reach the audience. So this is what matters. So in case you haven't put the stamp somewhere, but you have an awesome concept paper, we will just contact you and we'll tell you that you have to put a stamp on such and such page. Okay, I found a question meanwhile. So the participants are asking, they have submitted the application according to the previous deadlines and requirements. Do we now have to resubmit the application in accordance with the updated rules?
The only thing we will ask to be submitted updated wise will be Annex D, which is the conflict of interest form, since that was the main kind of change. But we'll talk about that in a few minutes in regards to the instructions on how to submit that. You will not need to resubmit the whole online concept paper. We'll just ask for that separately, but I'll talk about that in a moment.
Окей, і чи потрібно переподавати
Okay,
заяву?
and do we have to resubmit the application? Okay, Victoria Horotinska, your question has just been answered. And I confirm that you have to simply resubmit Annex D to TCA's email address that is mentioned in RFA. And this is what is important. This is what matters for everybody. Okay. Well, it seems to me that we have covered all the questions so far.
All right.
Rest, no worries. We're going to mention your questions, but we'll mention them in the other block that they relate to. Let's move on.
Yeah, we haven't forgotten some additional questions. So I think the next round we'll have a robust discussion. This is regarding the concept paper template itself. The first question, and one we've gotten a couple on, is question 18 of the concept paper. Application, what type of funding are you applying for? There's no classification of type, so how do you answer this question? Great question. As a reminder, only projects in the development stage are accepted. So winners, along with the funding, will receive expert guidance to develop the project, produce a pilot presentation, secure a distribution platform if it doesn't already exist, and use to fund the full project. So if your budget of the full project exceeds the maximum grant ceiling of 4,005,000 hryvnia, or you envision other sources of funding for the full production, please specify this. So types of funding could be development plus a pilot, because the full production budget would exceed the grant and its funding needs. Maybe you want the development plus the pilot plus the full production, meaning that the entire budget for full production is under that 4,005,000 hryvnia mark. Or maybe you were looking for the development of the concept, development of the pilot, and then partial production or partial funding of the full production, in case there are other sources that'll co-fund the full production to get there. Alex, Katya, anything to add to those types of funding?
Я хочу тут просто дещо додати.
I would like to add something, because these questions pop up because previously PICTH UA had two types of funding: development funding and pilot funding, and partial funding of full production. But this is why the rules have been amended this year, so that there are no projects that we invest money into their development, but then nothing follows. These projects never make it to TV channels, they never make it to online platforms, they never make it to the films. And it is good that if a year or 2 years later, you'll be able to find a partner platform that will invest their money and this project will be implemented. However, to avoid this kind of situations, this year, TCA is issuing grants that will cover the entire project, starting with development up to the pilot that should be demonstrated to the potential platform, so that they say, yes, we're interested in this program, in this show, in this TV series, in this film, and we are ready to allot the time slot for it, and that we're ready to also invest additional money into the full production. Because we also know that it's very difficult to find the funding for the initial stage of developing the project. It's very difficult to find the money for development and pilot specifically. But if you already have assistance from TCA, both in terms of money as well as advice from our international experts, with the help of TCA and PICTH UA, you have already created the script, you have already created the pilot episode. It will be much easier for you to source the additional funding in case you need it to create the entire product. But if this budget falls within the amount that PICTH UA can cover, you will not even have to look for these additional funds. However, after each stage, we will be summing up and assessing what we should further support this project, because we see if at the development stage, nothing really worked, the concept doesn't seem to be as interesting as it was supposed to be from the start, maybe it is not worth to invest money into that. If we support creating the pilot episode, but we see that video platforms don't really demonstrate any interest in this pilot, we will not be moving on with the full funding. So basically, we're breaking down the support process into several stages. But at the same time, we're ready to support you throughout the entire process.
Okay. So the next question that we have is regarding question 19 on the concept paper template. The total production budget of the project within this grant in hryvnia. Yes, this is the total planned production budget. So however much it's going to cost, you think it's going to cost to do the full production of whatever it is that you want to do for this grant. Question 20, the amount of funding in hryvnia that you expect to receive from Usaid under this grant. So in this question, you should indicate how much you want from TCA. So maybe for the full production of your activity, it's only going to be 2 million hryvnia. If that's all you're applying for, that's great. That's all you're applying for. If it's going to be 10 million hryvnia, we can only award up to that 4,005,000 mark. So you would answer question 20 with 4,005,000 hryvnia because that is the most that you could get from Usaid. Now, I didn't mention this in the answers to the questions, but I'll mention it here. Don't request the full 4,005,000 hryvnia unless you think you need it. We can tell if you're inflating your budget. So, you know, be cognizant, be realistic about your budget. The next question is regarding question 22. The total budget of the project in hryvnia if the amount is bigger than the amount covered by the grant. So yes, this is similar to question 19. If the project in hryvnia doesn't exceed the budget covered by the grant, then the amount mentioned in this question should be the same answer. And if it doesn't, just indicate the full amount. Administrative costs, please do not include administrative costs in your budget. This should, we shouldn't include any of your maybe leave payments for staff or non-related labor, anything like that. We want to indicate only what is needed to achieve the project itself as the type of grant that we anticipate awarding. Regarding another question on the budget, can it include expenses for public relations or social media marketing campaigns? Yes, it can. It can include this as something that you think will be needed to reach the target audience. So just indicate that. There's a question regarding, can a film crew's trip abroad to shoot a teaser of a feature film be included in the application? So travel expenses may be included in the budget. However, a trip abroad doesn't typically fit within the objectives of content created under PICTH UA activities. And we need a very strong justification of why your program that is supposed to be submitted or supposed to be talking about visible transformations in Ukraine or media matters in Ukraine requires a trip abroad.
Especially for the teaser.
Especially for the teaser. Really, it would need a really good justification. Another question regarding the budget. Is it possible to include in the budget the purchase of equipment? Yes. We've typically seen renting of equipment in previous PICTH UAs, but if you need to budget something to buy, please do. We can discuss it at the full application part. One thing to note, though, is that should you be moving forward with buying equipment, please pay attention to, now stay with me here, it's going to be in the questions and answers, but this is a very long number. Automated Directive System, ADS 303.3.35.2. This is the US government regulation regarding the prohibition on certain telecommunications and video surveillance services or equipment. So if you want to use your grant funds to purchase covered telecommunications services and equipment produced by or provided by companies, including Huawei, ZTE, and I think there's 3 other Chinese companies, we cannot buy it. So these regulations are included in detail in the RFA, but hopefully we can, once we get to the budget, the detailed budget portion, which will be in the full application, we will go through this in more detail. So I don't think you'll need to worry about this for the concept paper portion, but I just wanted to highlight that that is something we will need to consider. If you are going to buy equipment, please don't buy equipment or services from Chinese providers, particularly ZTE and Huawei, which I think are the 2 most widest used ones. Okay, let's talk about one question we got on the mandatory and required as applicable standard provisions. This makes my grant heart happy that somebody is interested in actually looking at these standard provisions. We have updated the links to both the English and there are Ukrainian versions on Google Drive. So we have updated the links in the RFA document to the Ukrainian versions, to links to the Google Drive. So you can check out the Word versions of the Ukrainian translations. We will talk more about mandatory and required as applicable standard provisions during the full application stage. But if you're curious and want to learn more, please do check them out because they are a very important part of Usaid grant management. All right, so the next tranche of questions we have is regarding the conflict of interest letter. Oh, Katya, yes.
Beth, sorry for interrupting here,
No.
but I got some more questions related to budget. So let's move to Ukrainian. Отже, запитання від Олени
A question from Olena Sadovnik. Hello, I have two questions. What is the percent for administrative expenses that is allowed from the total budget? And the second question, can you also budget the services for promo and ads? Beth has already answered the second question. So first question, what should be the percentage of administrative expense?
It depends on what you mean by administrative expenses here. We typically do not cover administrative expenses unless it is a direct part of supporting the grant. So I think this may require maybe a separate discussion with individuals, but typically we do not allow things like indirect costs. So for instance, if you are paying for maybe benefits for your staff, that really shouldn't be included in here. But outline what you think is needed and we can discuss, but typically administrative costs are not included.
Окей, дякую. І ще є одне запитання від Олени Охріменко.
And there is another question from Elena Охріменко. In the application for the project, you have to mention the general budget, the total budget. Is it possible at a later stage to make it more precise, to clarify it by the second stage or by the stage when we sign the contract?
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is basics right now. This is your best estimate with a concept. We will be fleshing out things further during the next stages of the competition, during the pitching and doctoring, as well as the final pitching stages. Should your application be selected for award, we will have further negotiations on the budget just to make sure everything is exact as possible. So we can make sure everyone is in agreement at that stage. Yes.
Okay, thank you. All the questions related to the budget, at least at this stage, are read. So yes, please. Go ahead.
All right. Let's talk about this conflict of interest letter. This had a lot of questions, understandably so, because the language that we did receive from our colleagues in DC was a little confusing. So what we have done is updated the letter in Annex D to be an actual letter. And this letter first declares that you, the applicant, understands Chemonics's policies regarding conflict of interest, which is listed in the letter. And two, gives you an opportunity to declare any potential, real or perceived potential conflicts of interest between your organization, TCA, Chemonics, and MRM. The letter should be on your official letterhead and signed, and it may be in Ukrainian, English, or both languages, whatever the team is most comfortable with. And as a big reminder here, declaring any family or business relationships between your organization, employees of your organization, Chemonics, and MRM, does not preclude you from participating in PICTH UA 4. This simply gives us an opportunity to start at the early stages to mitigate any potential conflicts of interest. So let's say that one of you guys is my sister and you're interested in applying, please do apply, but just mention, hey, I'm Beth's sister. So I am declaring that I have a family relationship with somebody in TCA. Or maybe it's, ooh, I actually like go on vacation every year with Alex. Like our families are best friends. I'm just going to declare that and say, hi, I have a family relationship with Alex. What that just means is you're eligible to participate. We will just work together to make sure that there is no real or perceived conflict of interest. You know, Alex probably won't review your particular application. So that's all we're asking for at this stage. And I just want to reiterate that if you do have family or business relationships with anyone on TCA, with Chemonics in general, or with MRM, that's fine. Just let us know so we can make sure we mitigate it. So what we are going to ask everyone to do is to please fill out this form. Once again, it can be in English, Ukrainian, or both, whatever you are most comfortable with. Answer the questions that are included and submit. If you have already submitted the old letter or an application already, this is the only piece of the application that we will ask you to update because nothing else really has changed. Do have an old version of the Annex D or you've already submitted, no need to resubmit online just to keep it organized. Please just submit the updated letter to pitchua4@transformua.com and note the date that you submitted your original concept paper just so we can triangulate where everything is. All we're doing is saving it to our files and just making sure that we can discuss separately should anything come up. So those are the responses to the conflict of interest letter. I'm sure there's more questions. Is anything else popping up regarding Annex D and conflict of interest?
Nope, nothing.
Great.
Yes, great.
So far. Okay. And the last tranche of questions is just related to any amendments. Once again, we do not need updated applications. If nothing in your application has changed except for Annex D, just submit Annex D separately to that pitchua4@transformua.com email address. Totally fine. Is it possible to refill the application? Sure, you can go ahead and refill it. Maybe you think you made a mistake or something like that. The last submitted application is the one that's going to be considered. So if you submitted an application maybe on January 10th and you're like, I actually want to change something, and you submit a new one on January 20, we'll review the one from January 20. And yeah, once again, if you want to make changes to a previously submitted application, once again, we will consider the last application submitted via the online concept page application form for that time. And I believe there were two more questions that we received. No, they're just timelines. Okay, that's kind of the end of my formal questions that we've gotten so far.
Someone asked about the rights, who the rights stay with, especially if it's only the development and the pilot stage.
Great question. Grants under contract with US government, all rights stay with the entity. So if you are developing it, Usaid does not ask for any ask for you to transfer any rights. Let me get up the exact language because Usaid will ask for sharing the rights, but let me get it up really quickly just to make sure I have the language correct. Please give me just 1 second on how we title this.
В принципі, важливо, щоб...
What is important here basically is for USAID to retain the right to show some extracts, some pieces of this product for reference of this as an achievement, for some presentation, especially when it is a video clip or some musical track, we should have the right for this. If we create a promotional video for PICTH UA, now we can post on YouTube and have some parts of your content. YouTube should not block it because if they discover that the right holder is against it, that would constitute a problem. If they think that. About the transfer of rights, I had a question, I don't remember who was the asking party, but about reporting and what kind of reporting and in what form should be presented. That person, whoever that is, missed all the webinars and workshops. This is a very broad issue. Reporting is there, and you should just look it up. With the opening webinar, we had plenty of comments concerning this department back then. We have a whole discussion. Annex D, can it be updated to be downloaded with the RFA document? It's available at PICTH UA site with the Annex D and all the links to the updated documents if you missed it. And in the RFA, there is the email address that you can just copy to send your updated conflict of interest letter. If you are afraid of us losing it, so there are such comments to that effect, you can direct that to PICTH UA email to us. All your letters are precious and carefully put in the right folder, and it's in your dossier and nobody else's. It's your personal file. And if we have exhausted the principal questions, and Beth was looking for the exact language she promised.
Yes, I found it.
Doug?
So according to ADS 318.3.2.3, copyrights and assistant agreements, you, the recipient, may assert copyright to works created under an assistant agreement. The US government does reserve a royalty-free, non-exclusive, and irrevocable right to reproduce, publish, or otherwise use the work for US government federal purposes and to authorize others to do so. So this is just to reconfirm here exactly what Alex said. You will retain the copyright and intellectual property rights, but USAID is going to want to show off all the cool work that you've done to other US government entities. So the US government will not assert copyright to produce your intellectual property for profit. They will simply want to share the pilot as an example of US government funding.
And Beth, since there was this question again, could you please once again touch upon the reporting issue?
So reporting during the actual grant implementation? Yeah. So the way the grants typically are put together is through what we call fixed amount awards. And fixed amount awards require reporting at each completion of each milestone. And we have specific reporting requirements for whatever activity you are doing. We have a specific monitoring and evaluation group of indicators that we will ask you to report on. So we will do this independently with each grant to outline what you need to report on. But basically, you are going to report on what you've done. We'll ask you to submit any scripts, whatever it is at that point. I mean, it's hard to say because each grant will be different. And any, but the only reporting we do not need is like receipts or anything. But we can talk about that separately when it comes to financial reporting. But programmatic reporting, yes, we will submit. We have a form that we will give each grantee that says exactly what you need to report on for your particular grant.
Окей, thank you. Чи можу рухатись далі по запитаннях?
Can we proceed with the questions? Beth, There is a question whether it is necessary to take taxes into account in the budget. Say yes.
Please do include taxes. As a note, we are a tax exempt because we're an international technical assistance project. So if you do need to include taxes, please do, and just note them separately, and we can discuss if anything seems weird.
Окей, дякую. Запитання, знову ж таки, анонімне. Скажіть, будь ласка, чи можна
Anonymous question whether it is necessary to use, is it possible to use this same project for two pitches? Can you comment on this for your pitching and for some other pitching? I can answer this question, actually. You can use the same project for PICTH UA or any kind of pitching agent, but if you win in PICTH UA, if you're awarded the grant, then you will have to comply with all the winners requirement. It may happen if you win in the two, there will be a conflict of requirements with the timeline, for example, that is necessary for the other arrangements or funding might come into conflict with the timelines that we will require from TCA under this PICTH UA project. So you have to be very careful in the scheduling exercise and thinking about how you will operate if you win in both pitchings. And perhaps you'll have to abandon one of them and stay with the other. And if you want to apply for the two for some additional funding, well, we had such precedents in the past, and this is easier done if you are advanced and get closer to a certain tangible result with your grant, and then you can look for some co-funding using some other pitching venues. But if you do it simultaneously, then it's more likely than not that you will have to pick up one because the timelines might be in conflict, and that will be a problem in that case. But you have to inform us in your application that you are applying for something else or somewhere else. And if you win, of course, or if you're one of the candidates, you should inform us to that effect.
Okay, thanks. I see more questions. One from Alessia Kos. I hope that this is your full last name. Can we submit animated series if the topic is interesting, if the theme is interesting for kids that are 6 and older? In our RFA, we do not mention any age group restrictions or anything regarding the kids' content, but there are themes. Themes for the applications. Visible transformation, theme number 2, and media matters, theme number 1. So if your application has to do with some other theme, even though it's extremely interesting, but if it doesn't have anything to do with one of the aforementioned themes, these 2 themes, then most probably your project will not be selected. One of the main criteria is that the applications should fall under one of 2 themes of PICTH UA 4. Great, thank you so much. The next question. No worries, Olga, Vyacheslav, I see that you're raising your hands. I just want to quickly first go through all of the questions submitted in the chat box. And afterwards, we're going to give you the floor. So question from Volodymyr Stitsenko. Are there any technical restrictions regarding the format, quality of the content for web platforms, for example, full HD, 4K, etc.? If you had read RFA, there are any restrictions whatsoever regarding the quality. And it is clear that you won't be able to now in 2022, especially in 2023, upload the content of poor quality because nobody's gonna view it. It's obvious that you will be producing the content of the quality that the viewers will be willing to see and to watch. That is why we do not have any restrictions regarding the quality. It's not in RFA. But this is the criterion that the platform will be very much interested in, the platform that will be used for your content distribution. Great, thanks. Question from Olga Reptune. What are the guarantees that the applicant's idea will not be used by some stranger? If you're afraid that your idea will be stolen by TCA projects, then probably you should submit it to some other pitch. Our favorite answer to this question is ideas are in the air. So, yep. Give me a moment. Oh, another question, quite technical, but it's also important. Could you please tell me, is there any kind of form for the letter of support from organization that can be attached to an application? This is a question from Elena Kirichak. Look, if this stage, when your project, according to PICTH UA conditions, is at the initial stage, initial development stage, if the platform, for example, a TV channel, can provide you with a signed agreement that clearly says that this is the time slot when you will be on air, but you understand that it is impossible. So on this stage, you can get letters in any form whatsoever that will be demonstrating the interest, which demonstrate that the TV channel is aware of this product, and if it is developed, the channel will think about demonstrating it. So of course, in this letter, it should be mentioned why the platform is interested in your content, but we understand that, of course, at this initial stage, we're not talking about any kind of contracts or agreements with broadcasters, because if you could sign the hard contract with the TV channel, they would have already assigned some funds for you to develop this content. Thank you. Let us move on. Is it okay to include US citizens into the creative team of the project? Beth, this is a question to you.
An excellent question. I think this may be one I'll have to answer later and look a little bit more into, because I am truly not sure. It depends on, I think, how they are included. Based on my knowledge of regulations, yes, it should be fine. Please just indicate how they are involved, and we can discuss further during the full application on if we need anything specific. But yes, that's fine. US government regulations state that we cannot give a grant in excess of 100,000 US dollars to a US entity. So as long as the expat, the US creative, doesn't own your organization and your application doesn't exceed 100,000 US dollars, then I think it should be fine. Please note it. We can discuss further during the full application stage.
Okay, thank you. Tamara
Molotkova is asking question regarding copyright of the pilot created using grant funds. So does the copyright stay with the creators, or does TCA get it? No, TCA does not get any rights copyright at all. Next, what do you mean by pilot? Say if we're submitting a full-length feature film. We are using the word pilot as a more general type term. In the framework of PICTH UA previously, there already have been feature films created. And in such case, development of a feature film ended up with creating a teaser, which allowed to better understand what this feature film will look like in the end. So in teaser, you can already show the actors who you want to be among your cast. You can already show some of the locations in your teaser. You can already show some examples of camera work, the director's perspective. So even in the teaser, you already can demonstrate lots of things so that the distribution company that you will be in touch with can say whether they are interested in this film. The same has to do with TV channels, so that they can see not simply your treatment on paper only, but something that they can see visually, so that they can better imagine what the end product would look like. This is why we're using the word pilot as a general type term, because we understand that there can be pilots of different formats, different duration. But what matters to us is that if you submit an application and submit the budget, and if the budget for the pilot is quite big, so that you don't say in the end that we're gonna film 1 minute video and this is gonna be our pilot. No, we want you to demonstrate a pilot of a proper duration, so that thanks to this pilot, the person watching it can see what it is about, so that with the help of it, we can sell your product to the platform. Okay, thank you. Okay, we have missed a question regarding budget of promo and PR. The answer was yes, that you can budget promo and PR, but there are certain restrictions regarding brands you'd like to work with. So this needs to be additionally discussed with TCA team. Moving on. Okay. Annex D, we have already mentioned Annex D. Can you submit an animated series? Alexander, RFA says that there can be animation series. Please read RFA thoroughly. It answers so many of your questions. Okay, Starlight Media is asking, two applications were submitted to get the funding in 2 categories. On what stage the executive producers will be informed about which of the projects makes it to the next tour? On February 9, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as we get through reviewing the concept papers, we will let you know which one of yours will be proceeding to the next stage. If you have submitted 2 concept papers that we actually want to, so one from one theme and one from another, if we decide we want to see both of those fully fleshed out and then choose which one we want to award, we will also let you know at that stage. We will be confirming, sorry, I have a lot of documents open to help support these questions. And then the final timeline in which you will know will be May 6, 2022. That's our announcement of winners. And so that's when you will know which of the themes that you applied for, we will ask you to implement, but you will have multiple stages to get through first. So if both your themes make it, you will know by February 9, 2022. If both your themes make it through pitching and doctoring, you'll know by April 11. And if you pitch both, the final pitching, we will make the final selection of which one we want to award to your organization by May 6.
І я хочу нагадати дещо, про що ми
I'd like to
говорили.
remind you something else that we were mentioning during the opening event of PICTH UA 4. One application per category from one media group. This restriction applies only to those organizations that form part of the media group that will get the grant funds, but it doesn't have to do with the TV channels of media group as potential broadcasters, platforms for the content that will be supported with PICTH UA 4. So if there are 5 different production companies say that their platform for distribution is one of the TV channels from Starlight Media Group or some other media group, it will be acceptable. We are not limiting you in this regard. There is only a restriction that has to do with companies that are directly the beneficiaries of grant money and that form part of one media group. Okay, thank you. We have covered all of the questions from the chat box, but there was also a question from Vyacheslav, which we already talked before, and there was also a question from Olga, but no, it's still there. Okay, then I suggest first I give the floor to Olga. I'm gonna give you the rights to turn on your video and unmute yourself. Olga, please join us. Unmute yourself and start your video.
Okay, can you hear me now? Great.
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you so much for this informative meeting. Elizabeth, Alexander, Kate, thank you so much. Well, I would like to clarify a little bit regarding the copyright again. I'm so sorry, but it is very important for us because actually we have applied for the development and pilot production. And we would like to clarify the following thing. You mentioned that the copyright will still share between us as a vendor and a grant maker, am I right?
The copyright will remain with you as the grantee.
Okay, and regarding the pilot production, we are planning that our pilot production will be the first episode of our series. Does it mean that we should also, well, actually our product should also carry any logos of Usaid, any brands or something like that?
And, an excellent question.
Yes, and another one, the second question, it's regarding our opportunity to rely on the further support of Usaid in case we just apply for development and pilot production. Thank you so much.
So to answer your first question regarding branding, well, first question regarding copyright stays with the grantee. Should the US government want to reproduce anything or share it internally, we will let you know ahead of time. That is kind of what we mean by right to reproduce. We're not asking for us to like air it anywhere, us meaning TCA, US government, Usaid. Regarding branding, we are working on this with Usaid actually as we speak regarding pilot programming. We've seen it both ways. We've seen it where we can say the pilot has been produced with Usaid funding and that's all, or we won't say anything at all. It really depends on the concept itself, the timeline for airing, who's producing the rest of it. It is a very case-by-case basis, but it is something we're trying to standardize right now with Usaid. So we will be hopefully having an answer that is a bit more specific than it depends. And could you repeat the final question? I'm sorry.
Regarding our opportunity to rely on the further support of Usaid donor, I mean, if we apply just for development and pilot production.
Okay, great. Yes, thank you. So Usaid, I think in 2019 released a new opportunity called a Renewal Award. Should we decide that after the development of a pilot that we love the concept and we want to continue to move it to full production, we will initiate a separate award under this renewal award clause, where you'll basically have a new grant to do the full production. But once again, that is very dependent upon how it goes. And if we decide it is within TCA's programmatic interest to move forward. If we do not proceed that way, we'd be happy to work with you on other potential opportunities for full production to make sure that awesome pilots get picked up and produced. So if it's not TCA, hopefully we can help you with either separate private financing or even maybe a different USAID implementing partner.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Дякуємо, Оля. Так, у нас у чаті вже знов з'явилися запитання. Будь ласка.
We have more questions in the chat box. I can see that. And there is a whole series of questions concerning, well, let's say the creative thematic contents. Let me answer them. And there is one question as to how the project format can provide for getting the message through as regards some social important issues. The actually principal idea of this project. It is possible, of course. It will all depend on what the project is about. For example, if you want to intend to get this message across, you should think about the message and the socially relevant topic and the audience that is supposed to receive this content, to appreciate it and change their attitudes, perhaps, and the way you are promoting, and how you have to reach out to that audience. It can be a TV audience for TV channels, the older generation in the rural areas, in some regional parts. You can make it a primetime drama or with an exciting story, but promoting the social important topic. It might be a great project, a great format to reach out, to have your outreach accomplished. If you target at the youth audience that wouldn't so readily watch traditional TV channels, they are on the internet, they are on YouTube, they are more specifically in Instagram. You cannot choose for that kind of audience the format of a series. You can, of course, but usually it's considered to be more effective to make it 1, 2, 3, 5-minute episodes, mini episodes, and you decide to offer this to the audience through Instagram because you're aware that that's where your audience sits, and that's where your format is. And that's how your format can influence your actual impact. And with the idea that you profess, champion, and the audience will hear the ideas that you would like to share through the content. Another question was about how under PICTH UA we can possibly apply for the projects that were developed for some previous pitchings with the ready-made scripts for episode 1, 2, or 3, plus a set of drafts for the subsequent episodes. If you apply for PICTH UA 4, we consider this the 0 level. You have done 5 to 10 drafts, but we start anew, considering it to be a first draft or pretending, and then the international experts read through the scripts, do some doctoring, and perhaps you will have to rework it several times before they actually put their name to it and say, this is something we can accept as a script, and then we have to adopt those scripts and it should be reconciled with the USAID as a policymaker, as a governmental agency. And if you think that after the fifth draft, that's it's script, if you win pitch 4 though, and start working with international experts, you might discover that this script is not yet done. Something has to be changed. This is very possible. And this year, we are accepting the projects at the original development stage so that you have no specific plans as to when you will start your production, because if you win here, and let's say that will be June when the grant agreement is signed, and your production plans are for August, and you have 8 episodes for the series. All the 8 episodes should be beaten to death with the experts. It is not enough to have 2 months for that. So you're notified in advance that we start to work with something that is supposed to be just a development, that it's commencing stage. Valery Borovik has a question. I'm connecting you, Valery. Valery is with us. Switch on your sound, please. Yes, we can hear you. Good afternoon. I'm Valery Borovik. I'm a producer general of Habdzonko studio. This is a new business for me. We usually do space, energy sector, and now we have done one film, a full-length film, but we are looking into the problem of the Crimea from the point of view of the military angle. We talked to Potomac Foundation, Leslie Clark, military experts, heads of staffs, what had to be done before the Crimea, how we could prevent the invasion. We have already applied. Is it something yet that you might consider for the program? The information attacks that we had starting from 1994, the Tuzla islands, and depending on your answer, we can either revoke or rewrite this, because it's a concentrated military analytical research, research for the alternative scenarios. And with USAID, we won that award, and we are making a film about 1994. And is it suitable for your program? I wonder. Valery, I'm not sure we can consult you in this key, because it's our rule that we have 2 topics that we can discuss for the applications. This is visible transformation and media matter. Under each topic, we describe the application, expectations from the application, and this is not an exhaustive list, and perhaps you can customize and make it look like the right thing, and the expert commission will discuss and take the decision. But now in the Zoom format, we cannot be final, because 98 people can put the same kind of question about the development. And we'll have then to consult everyone, because you're all equal as applicants. Okay. Thank you anyway. Thank you for asking. Now let's proceed, and we have another question from Natalia Klimchuk in the chat box. She wants to have an outline of the way in which the grantor can arrange some additional or co-funding if it is necessary for the implementation of the project, for production. That's the question. We can talk to TV networks in Ukraine. We can talk to other funds. We can talk to other programs of Usaid being implemented in Ukraine. Well, that's how it stands. Thank you very much. Now, well, in fact, I would like to come back to Valeri's question a little bit. This is a question that many participants would like to put, and you have to understand there that TC experts are not in position to evaluate your application before the deadline and until it's and before it's final. We have had some approaches for the development, for the concept, for the idea, and so forth. So it's a bit premature, you know, at this stage. We should not do that before the complete package of your project is made available. And that's for the experts at the final stage to understand whether your application is good enough to get the funding.
A question from Vyacheslav Havalo to Elizabeth. What results is Usaid expecting this year? Is there any difference compared to the previous edition of PICTH UA? Well, I think that this is a question not even from a participant, rather a journalist. The difference between last year edition and this year edition was mentioned on the opening day and in the concept of the content.
Please.
Yeah, I mean, if you're asking on more of an indicator perspective of what we are looking for, no, not much has changed. We will have some additional indicators related to COVID-19 added into our monitoring, evaluation, and learning plan. But in terms of what we are trying to achieve as a project, no, nothing has really changed. Just slightly different updates to the rules of PICTH UA 4 based on different funding availability and how we want to try to change the, as Alex has mentioned extensively, the development phase, you know, making sure that we're really involved and get a lot of really cool expert advice to create really exceptional products that are put out onto the Ukrainian market.
Okay, дякую.
Okay, thank you. Maria Simonova is asking to show an example of the filled in application and D annex specifically from somebody who has answered all of the questions and said no to all of the questions. I don't think that we have this kind of a template. Maybe I'm wrong, though.
No, we don't have a sample, but basically just take Annex D. Anytime it says organization name, put in the name of your organization. If the answer is no, put no and sign it and submit it.
Okay, дякую. Ruslana.
Okay, thank you. Ruslana Brunavitska is asking, can we submit application in Ukrainian only, or should we submit it bilingual? I'll take that. It should be submitted into languages as the application form mentions. Next question from Stanislav Gudkov. The budget form, can it be in any format, or is there some specific? You probably haven't read the rules thoroughly. Elizabeth, maybe you can comment on this.
The budget we are asking right now is just high-level figures. During the full application, should your concept make it to full application, we will have a very fancy spreadsheet that we will share with everyone and have a separate session on how to complete the full budget.
Rust.
Okay. I think this is it. Maybe there are some more questions that people would like to ask out loud. We have still 71 attendee, which is quite good. Okay. Well, I think this is it then.
Thank you, everyone.
Катя, Бес, можливо, якісь фінальні заключні
That maybe you would like to say a couple of final remarks to inspire the participants.
From an operations and grants side of things, I'll leave the inspiration to my program colleagues, Alex and Katya. We'll call our Katya, not MRM Katya, TCA Katya. And on the grants perspective, we will be compiling these questions, including all those that I already provided an answer to, and the ones that were discussed today in written format as soon as possible. So we will send those out to post them publicly. So thank you all. They should be posted hopefully tomorrow at the very latest, but I know it's the end of the day in Kyiv, whereas I have a full day ahead of me here to compile everything. I am based on the East Coast of the US right now. With all of that, thank you all so much for participating and for asking your questions and for sticking with us. We know that for those of you who have participated in PICTH UAs 1 through 3, that there are some differences this time, and we welcome all these questions, and we really appreciate everyone taking the time to review the request for applications document and come up with such thoughtful questions. Alex, Katya, anything else to add?
Дякую всім, що долучилися.
Thank you all for having joined us. I really liked what Alexandra said, that you shouldn't worry that all of the documents are filled in properly with stamps on the right pages. We want to find as much awesome content as possible, and we will be assisting you in every way possible by engaging experts from the US, from Ukraine, from Europe. So we're looking forward to the deadline when we can look through all of the applications, get acquainted with all of your ideas. You still have time ahead, and we're looking forward to it. Alexander, thank you all. Looking forward to your applications. Cool. Now, on behalf of MRM team, I'd like to thank you all, our colleagues from TCA and all the participants. Thank you for such cool questions. And I see that people in the chat box are also saying thank you. They're saying that this was a very informative and inspiring webinar. Thank you for your feedback. So yes, we're looking forward to your applications. You can submit them till the 24th. Those who have already submitted them, you still have a chance to resubmit your application if you feel like it, or simply submit the new Annex D, which was mentioned so many times today, to 2 email addresses, which we have mentioned in the chat box. We also have PICTH UA email box, and if you submit questions, we try to respond them as soon as possible. So all of the organizational matters that have to do with budget participation, I hope were covered today. So you still have the time till January 24, and afterwards, we're gonna stick to our schedule. Thank you all so much. Enjoy your evening.